Get into some real shit right now, man. It's your boy Damian Harkless. We talking about some baby back bullshit, discrimination, some shit as citizens we shouldn't accept no matter where it's at. We talking about what's going on in Missouri. You see the NAACP initiating the travel advisory, which to me essentially does nothing for us. It's basically saying watch out nigga, they dangerous over there, which is something if you're a teacher of self, then you can infer and imply where it's dangerous as a person of color. You know, the southern states have historically been dangerous. You know, states like Missouri have been dangerous. Other states who were slave states, or other states who were known for lynch mobs and just known for discriminatory practices. All the states have their methods, but some are more overt. We're talking about overt discrimination. So the travel advisory doesn't really do nothing for a guy like me, but I guess it helps. But why the travel advisory was made by the NAACP is in a response to this bullshit, this new legislation, this new piece of law that has been passed already, called the SB 43, how to handle unlawful and discriminatory practices. They are limiting your access and your right to sue for discrimination. The first clause, the first statement in there states that we are doing this initiative as a motivating factor standard. So basically, if race or the discrimination or your classification is not the motivating factor, the driving force in you being discriminated, then it is to be omitted, then it is to be suppressed, then it's to be invalidated. It is not relevant in this case. So your case is going to be more likely to be thrown out, and you're not going to be tried fairly. Now, if we know historically, federally at this level, Obama a couple years ago passed what we call the Lead Belly Fair Wage Act, some shit like that, which allowed us to file for discrimination federally easily. However, that a discrimination case doesn't pass higher than a 20% rate. So the succession rates for discrimination cases are already low. Yet, if you're delegated to a state area, state laws, this is not federal. When you're talking about state laws, you're talking about state biases. So when we talk about Missouri, you have to talk about a slave state, formerly. You have to talk about post-slavery, early 1900s. Missouri is one of the highest states in leading lynch mobs. So you have citizens from the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1940s lynching black men. So you have known discrimination in this area. You have where black folks were getting incriminated in the 20s wrongfully, and lynch mobs, quote unquote, breaking into the prisons to lynch them and actually succeeding. That's not, come on, that's them whitewashing the evidence. You have these police in cahoots in Missouri letting these motherfuckers get lynched, opening the floodgates for the lynch mob to come get the Negro. So you have Missouri with this deeply rooted history of oppressive methods. Then you have Mike Brown, Ferguson is in Missouri. Then you have the Ferguson Police Department, predominantly white, policing a black neighborhood. So when you talk about Jim Crow, you have to look and see how the segregation and how the discriminatory methods are still prevalent today. This is not a thing of the past. If you were in a lynch mob in the 20s, then your fucking grandkid is around now. Your kid is around now. You think they don't inherit your racist ideologies? Bullshit. So we're talking about that to say that this new practice, this new law is nothing but a continuum of segregation, a continuum of allowed discrimination. The SB 43, it states, the primary initiative on there states that in order to file for discrimination in the workforce, it has to be race, or your classification has to be a motivating factor. The first thing it says is motivating factor standard. So if race or your classification wasn't a motivating primary factor in why you got treated unruly, then the case is to be dismissed. I just told you federally they barely succeed on the federal level. So this by a state level, you're going to get a lower succession than usual. You're not even going to get cases being tried due to this initiative that just passed. And then you have the bill. It's called SB 43. The bill references cases in which to repeal, on which the legislation will repeal how the judge is supposed to act upon these cases. So they had one case where a former basketball coach in Missouri was being discriminated, clearly being treated, well, to me clearly, but with this motivating factor clause, you damn near have to catch your boss calling you a nigga, or you damn near have to record them saying that race is the reason why they don't like you. That's prior to this motivating factor that they're trying to initiate. It was a contributing factor. So if you made a couple mishaps and fucked up, but somewhere along the lines they can find race as a significant enough issue, then the case is to be accepted. The case is to be tried. But now they can find any piece of justification to say that it's not about race, as if race wasn't hard enough to explain and to justify. We as black folks, we already try to justify that racism exists. It's hard enough. I just told you the discrimination numbers federally. They don't believe it as it is. So this Missouri law is just a testament to your second-class citizenship. Then you have the travel advisory. The travel advisory does nothing. It just tells us not to go. They're not implementing any laws or any sanctions in Missouri to try to stop what is preventing us from going, because obviously there's domestic terror there, right? Right? Is there domestic terror in Missouri for people of color? You wouldn't initiate a travel advisory if it wasn't. You have this law that should be abolished, but instead you just tell black people not to go there. This should tell black people their worth in America. This is why I don't protect America. This is why I don't speak for America. They don't speak for you. A part of that legislation also makes it harder for you to file a complaint. You have to go through more navigations than before. This is the Missouri Human Rights Act, SB 43, within the Missouri Rights Act. This is what they are accepting. This is what has been passed by many people there. Some people didn't want to vote within their Congress because, you know, morally they don't even want to be a part of that bullshit. But this is being passed and you will be affected tomorrow. There are certain exclusions to who is an employer within that legislation. So some people are exempt, like Indian tribes. They can't sanction what Indian tribes do, and like properties of the United States, businesses owned by the United States. They can't regulate everything, but many parts of Missouri will implement this on the 28th, I believe, late August. So this is just clear discrimination if we've ever seen it. We let it slide too easy, black people. We let it slide too easily. Yes, I'm from California. Yes, the environment is different. But my people in Missouri are going to go through the ringer, are not even going to be able to have a voice. You claim discrimination in Missouri, it is going to be impossible for you to prove that, for you to validate that. Though we know that 75% of their traffic stops are black people, while not 75% of their citizens are black. So it's very disproportionate in that regard. We know the discrimination is there. History of lynch mobs, top 5 lynch mob states. We know it's there. We just don't care enough as black people, and we should know that they don't care. Legislation, politicians, the president, the elite, whoever's creating these laws and these sanctions that keep implying we're second-class citizens, they don't give a fuck. This bill is really sickening, man. I would love for y'all. And then I spoke on which case that they chose to reference to repeal. Now, in regards to the case that they chose to accept, was one, I think it was called McDonald something versus Green, in which Green was a civil rights activist facing discrimination amongst the McDonald Corporation by not being hired due to his civil rights duties. But I think statewide Green won the case, but it was taken to the Supreme Court, in which he lost because they couldn't find tangible evidence that Green or that race was the primary factor and the primary reason. So this new law is imposing that case to make it seem like you have to have something tangible, visible to prove a concept of racism, which is, it's nothing tangible I can get aside from a recording. So the rights of the people are being taken, man. That's why I'm doing this video. I feel like if you're in Missouri, if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you're in the LGBT community, if you're someone who is bound to face discrimination and discriminatory practices in Missouri, you got to be careful, man. You got to look out. You got to find which organizations you can go to that don't apply to this Missouri Human Rights Act, period. So yeah, man, this is Dame. This is just a warning. They out there to get us, man. I don't know. I'm not finna sit here and justify racism and justify why it exists in my life. I told y'all, like, as people of color, we know it exists in our reality. In their reality, it may not. I'm not finna explain it. It's hard enough explaining to a white citizen. Like, our forefathers, our African forefathers, they didn't believe them. They didn't believe Martin when he was saying it. They didn't believe Malcolm when he was saying it. They didn't believe our leaders before. So I don't expect them to believe me. I'd be naive. I just have to tell my people that we have to be aware of this. We have to start pushing for our people, whether or not you're in Cali, New York, or Missouri, because it's going down. They're sanctioning laws day after day to discriminate against the people as a whole. And people looking at this, you shouldn't protect this at all, whether or not you benefit or not. You shouldn't be protecting this. Period. It's your boy Dame, man. Peace. Look up that SB 43 shit. I sift through it. I read it a few times. The shit is unbelievable that they can put this, impose this right in our face. Like, we don't care. We don't care that we live in Jim Crow right now. If you want to look around, we live in Jim Crow. The upper class has predominantly white citizens. The low class has predominantly people of color. In Missouri, what you thought? In the southern places, if you've ever been anywhere in the southern area, it's going to be one area where all the black people are, and the rest of the state, like let's say Texas, the rest of the state is going to be with white people, or Texas is a different area because it's really Mexico, so you're going to see Mexicans there too. But most southern states have you botched in and subjugated to a certain area. So we're living Jim Crow. We're living Jim fucking Crow. SB 43 proves it, and the travel advisory proves it as well, because that's what they do to protect us. To tell, hey, well, look out. You better look out. It's not what you was telling when the Black Panthers were just trying to defend themselves. You wiped them out of the fear of, out of white people's fear, the fear of being white supremacy, even being attacked. This Dame, man. I didn't want to rant this long, but this is some bullshit. Clear cut bullshit, man. Peace. Look that shit up.